Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, it's good. How are you going?
I'm good. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I should be honest, I'm a little bit starstruck. I loved Feel Something. It really it got me through a hard time.
Oh,
So I'm sorry if I'm a bit nervous.
no, you're all good. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the last time you were in Australia was 2018.
Mhm.
What are you like, what's it like to be back here? What are you excited?
We're very, very excited. Yeah, it's been way too long since we've been in Australia, honestly. I mean, obviously, given COVID and the craziness of the last few years, we weren't able to make it over as soon as we were hoping to. But yeah, I mean, we're so excited to come back, and truthfully, like I'm looking forward to all of it. I'm looking forward to the shows, but I'm also very much looking forward to like some nice warm weather. We've had nothing but cold, rainy, bleak winter over here for a while, and it'll be nice to maybe be able to go to the beach and just hang out, have a nice warm vacation almost. Um, yeah, no, we couldn't be more excited, and getting to go with Boston Manor too is, that's a dream come true. Just because they're literally some of our best friends in that we've made through music. So, um, yeah, getting to tour with them again, it's gonna be great. I'm super excited.
That's great. I've heard that Australian crowds are like a bit rowdier than crowds elsewhere. Have you found there's anything that makes us kind of unique?
I do notice that in general, I think that it's the crowds in Australia are just overall way more intoxicated. You guys can party like no other, which is so fun. But one of the things that stuck out to me the most last time that we were in Australia is um shoeies. That was not a thing that we had ever seen before, was somebody doing a shoey. And then I felt like every show that we played in Australia, somebody ended up doing a shoey like mid. It was the weirdest fucking thing ever. Uh, but it was awesome.
We love making
um,
people drink out of shoes. Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. So that's fun, and I love a rowdy crowd. I love the energy that comes from being in a room that's just really, really like buzzy and exciting and fun, and you're like almost a little scared because it's like, oh fuck, like am I gonna get hurt? But also I don't care because like I'm having such a good time. So I love it. I can't wait.
Great. I'm actually really curious to get your thoughts on something. I feel like it's said a lot that emo is dead. But I think bands like yours are proof that it isn't. What are your thoughts on that? Why do you think post-hardcore emo music, post-rock continues to like survive and resonate?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's always going to be a lane for it. I think that this sort of specific subgenre of alternative music that we all kind of live in, um, as long as there's people there coming to shows and supporting that style of music and keeping it alive, like it'll never truly die. I think that obviously emo music and uh, this kind of realm of stuff definitely had a huge heyday in the mainstream eye in like the mid 2000s, early 2010s era, when you had bands like fucking, I don't know, like Simple Plan and stuff playing on mainstream radio and that sort of thing. Where obviously like that was a huge kind of cultural shift from the normal kind of I guess pop music of the time, right? Um, and so, do I think that it will ever maybe be at its point, as back then? Who knows? Who's to say? It's possible. But I think, I mean, more than anything, like underground music as a whole, like it only thrives if the community that like harbors it is also thriving. So if you're going out to shows and you're supporting small bands and you're involving yourself in the community, then there's no way that that community is going to die out. But the second that the community stops caring, then it begins to fizzle, you know? Um, so I don't know. I'm kind of rambling, but I guess at the end of the day, like, I think that this music and this scene is so important to so many people. And who knows, like maybe it's not ever going to be as big or as profitable as it maybe once was. And maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. Who knows? But I'm happy that it's alive. And obviously, like you said, you know, bands like ours and um, other acts that are kind of continuing to carry that torch, to me, like that's the most important thing, is that so long as it exists, like there will be a place for it, you know?
Definitely. Um, I think there's definitely this image of the hardcore scene as like super aggressive and hyper masculine in kind of a meathead way, but your lyrics are
Sure.
so like sensitive and introspective. Do you think that stereotype of the hardcore scene is true? And how do you navigate like sensitivity and masculinity in that scene and in your life?
I think it certainly can be true. Yeah, you know, I think that the hardcore macho dude um attitude is very prevalent, and I think it just kind of varies from band to band and from scene to scene. Um at the end of the day, like I'm not trying to be anything that I'm not. And what it comes down to is that I'm just very soft. Like I'm not a tough guy. I'm not uh like very masculine to begin with. I'm very much like soft, you know, and I'm okay with that and I'm comfortable in that. And our music has always been about just being honest with ourselves and kind of speaking from the heart. And so I think if I were ever to try to do something that wasn't that, it would just feel uh, disingenuous, and vice versa. You know, I think that if somebody who's been through maybe a really tough life and is an actual very tough, like hardened person, tried to then, you know, write songs about their feelings, maybe it wouldn't go over so well with a lot of people. You know what I mean? So who knows? But yeah, I mean, I've always, like I said, I've always just tried to be myself and be real and raw, and just kind of write the music that comes from a place of honesty and openness. And I think we're just going to continue doing that for the time that we make music, or at least until it doesn't feel natural anymore. But I think that it always will, because it's just honest.
Yeah. Um, so I think your sound like has evolved so much, and you've been talking about like while it feels honest. And I think like Cherry Thrill in particular has a much poppier vibe. Where do you see like your sound going? What's next for Movement?
Yeah.
What's next for you?
So Cherry Thrill is definitely like one of the tracks that we really tried to step outside of our own comfort zone and outside of our box, and really just like experiment with something new. Um, I'd say that overall, our new music is very much at its core what Movements has kind of always been and always will be. And that is, you know, that honest, uh, real kind of like discussion, narrative based sort of, um, you know, this is me and this is what I'm putting out into the world type energy. But sonically, I think that we're really trying to challenge ourselves and challenge what Movements can be as a band, right? So the new record is a pretty significant mix of both of those sides of things. I'd say that probably about half of it is like, you know, very much in the same vein as like what a typical Movements sort of like song would be about lyrically, but with a little bit of a different presentation on it when it comes to the actual sound. You know, the sound of these songs is it's a little bit more upbeat. It's more fun. It's kind of like more in your face. There's a lot more energy in this record. I'd say it's probably our most energetic record so far. And then the other half is areas that we've tried to branch out in, kind of in a similar realm to that Cherry Thrill style. song where we just wanted to draw inspiration from different places, you know, taking inspiration from like the Killers or from the Strokes or any number of like just more kind of quote unquote mainstream artists, and bringing that into our world and just seeing how we can blend the two together. So I think that, you know, the classic typical Movements fan will still really enjoy this record so long as they can see it for what it is, which is, you know, a departure, but in a good way, from what we've always tended to do. Because I don't think that any band should ever write the same record twice, you know? And if we want to continue to stay relevant and we want to continue to grow and build this, you know, this career for ourselves, that we have to constantly be pushing those boundaries and we have to constantly be challenging ourselves to step outside of that box. So like I said, that, you know, the classic Movements fan will probably still really like it. And I think that people who maybe have never heard of our music before and maybe wouldn't be so into a record like Feel Something or a record like No Good Left to Give that is so dense and so emotional and so like heavy, I think they'll also be really attracted by this sort of newer sound that is more along the lines of something that's just a little bit, I guess, more palatable and more digestible than some of our older music might be.
Sure, it's like an extension of what you were doing before.
Yeah.
Um, Not to get too like almost famous on you, but I'm curious about what you love about music, whether you have any first big memories of music, and like when was the moment that you knew this was what you wanted to be doing?
Oh man, I've known that I've wanted to play music for kind of ever. I remember being like a kid, probably 10 or 11 years old, and being on YouTube, early YouTube days, and seeing bands that I looked up to and bands that I loved, like posting their tour, like video recaps and stuff. And I remember one in particular was Under Oath, where it was kind of like a behind the scenes look of Under Oath on tour. And, you know, you got to see clips of them performing, then also clips of them backstage and clips of them doing normal tour stuff, like hanging outside of hotels and like talking to their fucking girlfriends on the phone or whatever. And like, you really got to see like their lives. And then you could see them like fucking around with the other people on the tour package and like playing pranks on each other. Like, and I just loved it. I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. I was like, man, that looks like so much fun. That's something I really want to do. And then I started going to shows when I was like 13. And I just absolutely fell in love with like the feeling that shows gave me, where again, it's like that excited but nervous, but like you're just buzzing with energy and you don't know what's about to happen, but you know that it's going to be really sick. And I got addicted to it and I just wanted to feel that feeling all the time. And so then when when I chose to start making music, and I mean, mostly as a way just to kind of, I think, get my own feelings out, right? Like I don't think I ever planned on, none of us really ever planned on our band being anything special or really even making it as far as we've made it. Like we're pretty fucking thankful to have come this far. But yeah, like when it came down to it, we were all kind of just doing this just to see if we could. And we've gotten to a point where it's like, wow, like this is actually, this is turning into something very real. And it's just, yeah, it's fun. It's so interesting to be able to go from seeing it on a screen, on a computer screen, whatever, and like wishing that it was your life, and then growing up and here I am like living this kind of dream life that I've always wanted to be a part of. It's just, yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. I'm curious about if, because obviously you've been really open about your struggles with mental health, and I feel like that can be a barrier for people to sort of branch out. What would you say helped you to like find a sense of identity and make that community, um, given everything else going on?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest with you, like I never expected to become any sort of like voice for mental health advocacy, you know. That was never like my goal with this project or with this band. It was just something that I kind of fell into because of, I mean, given the nature of just like what I was writing about and what this band I think means to a lot of people. So that was definitely like a weird kind of transition to make, was like really leaning into what it means to be like, or I guess like what it means to be in the role that we've kind of accidentally put ourselves in. And so obviously, I mean, I'm always going to be a huge advocate for mental health awareness, and I'm always going to want to spread light on, or shed light on like the issues at hand, right, and destigmatize mental health problems. But at the end of the day, it was like I didn't I didn't mean to do those things. It just sort of happened. And so, yeah, I've kind of just had to navigate that, right? And I'm really glad that our music can help people feel better about whatever it is that they're going through, and obviously I'm super thankful for that. But yeah, it's interesting because I feel like I almost owe a certain amount of that to people still, and I don't know that that's maybe something that I will always not. It's so hard to explain. Like, I guess what I'm saying is like, for instance, on our new record, I think that we tried intentionally to not write from a standpoint of, okay, this song is a song that we're going to write because it's going to connect with this type of person, right? Like, we try to stay away from that style of thinking and instead write the song the way that the song was calling out to us to be written, right? And it didn't matter if that song was if it is about mental health, great, but if it's not, then it's still okay. Like, we're going to just write a song that's not about mental health awareness, not about struggling with some sort of issue or whatever. That doesn't mean that there's not still depth to it, but we're trying not to specifically pander to being like we're the mental health band, you know what I mean? Not that it's not important, but that we want to just challenge ourselves to continuously step beyond that boundary and allow movements to be more than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like there's a stereotype that, emo bands, they only write from like a mental health advocacy place. But California has a super rich history of like post-hardcore punk, emo, etc. Did you
Absolutely.
feel that legacy? Also, people have this image of California as like super nice and chill. Why does it make so much sad music?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think that there is a common misconception about California, and sure, maybe it's we don't have the same amount of like depression rates and whatever that other parts of the country or other parts of the world might have, because yeah, we live in a beautiful area. We live in perfect weather most of the time, and it is awesome. But that doesn't necessarily change the fact that like mental health is going to be an issue regardless. There's a huge problem out here with drug addiction and with uh you know different sides of the kind of like dark underbelly that you don't necessarily see on the surface. Los Angeles and Orange County, like, there's a lot going on underneath that whole glitz and glam kind of lifestyle that you associate with it, which in reality is very, very deep and dark and has some pretty like gnarly undertones to it. So, there, I think there is still a significant amount of like that sadness that comes up through the music, and maybe in some ways like it's almost more stark because you wouldn't expect it from somebody who's kind of living or has lived in like this sort of what someone might consider like a quote unquote perfect place. So it's interesting. I don't know what it is necessarily, but yeah, I mean, we just, like I said, like, we just write about what we write about and what we want to be honest about. And I think, yeah, like the scene, like you were saying, with Orange County especially having such a rich culture in punk music and in post-hardcore and in the hardcore scene, being exposed to that and growing up around that and having my hometown venue be Chain Reaction, which is like one of the most legendary punk venues of all time. Um, that really shaped, I think, like my understanding of the music industry, and it shaped like um my upbringing in this world a lot, because I was able to see like where all of this kind of like came from. And yeah, it's very interesting. It's very cool, and the scene has always been extremely strong here, and I think that it continues to be very strong, and I hope that it doesn't ever lose its special feeling.
Yeah, definitely. As a like ex-Seattleite, I very much get the legacy of genre thing. Um,
Absolutely.
you kind of mentioned about like the darker underbelly of things. I know that you also love Ethel Cain and Preacher's Daughter, and I think to me it highlighted
Yeah.
the importance of politics on creating new music. And the US has had some really turbulent years lately. Has that changing political landscape brought about any new sensibilities in the music you make or want to make?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly aspects of like our music that I think are always going to be influenced by what's happening around us. And historically, like we haven't been a very political band, right? But I think at this point in where we are at with the current political climate in the United States, and the way that it has been for the last few years, if you're not taking some sort of stance, then you're part of the problem. And so we always are going to try to advocate for what we believe in and what we think is right. Um, and maybe not always outwardly directly in our music, but there's certainly parts of the new record that are subtle, um, subtle messages about certain political stances that we might have. And it's important to us because we want to at least be some sort of positive effect in this world, right? And making some sort of positive change, um, because there is so much fucked up shit going on, and there is so much, um, yeah, like that dark underbelly is it's very real.
Mm.
So we can only do so much, but we can try our best to stand up for what we believe in, and do the things that we think are right, and that sort of thing. So I think that as we grow up and as we get older, and continue to mature in our writing styles, we will eventually probably make more like political leaning stuff. But for right now, it's a little bit more on the symbolic side, I guess.
Um, the like I get yeah, emo and post-hardcore scene has quite a track record of being like quote unquote cancelable and has issues with like sexism and power imbalances and things like that. What can people who love that genre and what can artists do to try to like mitigate that?
Um, Honestly, like I don't know. Obviously, like I do believe in holding people accountable, right? And if there's somebody who is very obviously abusing their position of power, or who is treating anybody with some sort of like gnarly disrespect, you know but especially someone who's mistreating women, or who is just has cyclical tendencies of abuse, like obviously those people need to be held accountable. Um my issue with the situation is that it feels less like accountability and more like exile, and
Mm.
that people who get quote unquote canceled um, suddenly become this sort of social pariah where there's no redemption for them ever, right? And they are kind of always seen as this um, stain on society. And maybe for some people that is for the best, but I think that there have been many situations in which um, people need to be given the opportunity to take accountability for their actions, learn from them, and grow and change, and be allowed the space to do that without being shunned forever. Because I'm a believer in the idea that people can and do change. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that, because although I believe that, I guess, the term cancel culture, although I believe that it's important because I do think that we need to hold people accountable, I think it's also very dangerous if it's not done the right way. And so I think that we just kind of collectively, as a whole, need to widen our perspectives a little bit about what canceling somebody is. And I think that everybody has room to kind of give each other a little bit more grace in certain scenarios, and allow for there to be that change and for there to be that growth. Because without it, like, what are we doing? The whole point is trying to make people who have done maybe some bad things in their lives understand that those were bad things and try to be better. But I don't think that you can do that if you're just going to, kick them to the curb forever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I've also
Yeah.
realized I've chewed up so much of your time. Um,
No, hey, you're fine. I'm chilling, as long as, I mean, I don't know if I have more after this, but I don't mind at all.
I think you might. So I think I will have to wrap it up. But thank you so much for talking with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Um,
thank you for also for yeah, thank you.
I'm really excited to see you in Melbourne as well. So I will, yeah,
Yeah. Please come say hey when we're there. It'd be very nice to meet you face to face.
I'd love that. Great. Well, yeah, thank you so much again.
Yeah,
Have a great day.
thank you. See ya.
Bye.